Hi everybody, welcome to Chapter 7 for our organizational theory class. We're going to be talking about organizational culture and climate as part of this chapter. So, in terms of this class, I would argue this is one of the least important chapters in the textbook. We cover it because you already have a class that looks at organizational culture, but we're taking it from an organizational theory perspective. My goal is to focus on elements of culture and climate, and if you want to implement it in your research, that's great, but you've had a course that's already specifically looked at it. This is easy to study if you have individuals that are honest with you when they respond to you. If they're not honest with you, that can be an issue and that can be a problem as well. So we look at culture and climate through an HR perspective because it really shows us how leaders structure a specific work environment to socialize within an organization. People develop their own values and beliefs based on the organization and their time in there, and then that really sets up what the culture of the organization is. So we have 7 elements when we're looking at organizational culture: innovation and risk-taking, attention to detail, outcome orientation, people orientation, team orientation, aggressiveness, and stability. And we're going to cover each one of these a little bit as we progress through the rest of the slides. So, cultures exist to identify what the core values of an organization are. This comes in whether you fit in the organization, what the mission statement is, what the vision statement is. It gives you an environment where people work. Each organization has its own culture and climate. It gives you stability within the organization. Once you understand what the culture is, you're more apt to follow its lead. And then it gives you the policies and procedures within the organization as well. So, you've heard the word fit at some point, and this is a theory that I like in organizational theory. It's the concept of person-environment fit. You've all heard the word fit. You know that it's what it means. It's a reflection of employee culture. While you're watching this video, take a minute and write down how you would describe a person who just walked into your district or organization fitting within the people you work with. Try to think about the characteristics you're looking for, because I want you to think about how you identify your culture and how somebody fits within your organization. So you might have a cynical attitude towards fit, because some people might say you just don't fit here. If that happens, somebody can be stereotyped in an organization before they even start, and that can stop with institutionalism, barriers to change, barriers to diversity, and barriers to acquisitions and mergers. So, organizations take on lives of their own. They acquire reputations that's different from what a company initially set to accomplish. That's the notion of institutionalization. If you have a school district that had a vision and a mission and it changed over the course of a year, based on new employees, turnover, that sort of thing, and the teachers kind of took control from the principal, that's the notion of institutionalization. Reputation could change, people might not want to work there, and it's not what the company or the school district initially tried to accomplish. Sometimes when organizations are successful, they don't change. If it works, don't fix it. So you have a consistent behavior and people won't adjust to that behavior because they're satisfied with the organization. I don't see this as bad, but let's say you have new individuals that come into an organization. For instance, somebody comes in with their own specific set of skills or expertise. Then when they come in, they want to help grow the organization, but they're told, we're doing well, we don't need your input. So that's a problem, and that's a barrier for success as well. So diversity doesn't necessarily mean race in this example, but it means somebody who's diverse to the culture. If somebody doesn't fit, people might refuse to hire you because you don't fit with the general requirements of the culture. That way there's a barrier to enter. You have no chance of getting in this district because you don't fit within the culture, and the individuals in charge might believe that you can't adjust to it. So organizations have to be open to avoid this from occurring, and it relates to that succession planning concept that I spoke about earlier in the class, where if you're doing it correctly, you're promoting 80% internally and 20% externally, and that's a fair balance. So if you have your own culture established, people will not try to merge or acquire other organizations. School consolidation is a perfect example of this in a district. If the district has already established itself, then there's an issue because they won't consolidate the elementary schools because each one has a life of its own and a culture, even though it could save the districts hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So you could pass up on opportunities to really maximize your staff and your workforce because these changes could be a barrier and change the culture. And that can be a problem, and you could lose money that could help with your funding. So culture begins basically when you try to hire people and keep employees who think and feel the same way they do. Your behavior as the leader is the role model, and people value you, they internalize with you, and then they turn their socialization skills to how you think and you feel. So culture is sustained only when people that are working there keep the culture. If the culture is important, top management becomes people that believe and subscribe to the culture. It's sustained by the socialization within the organization, people that are likely to go out for a Friday happy hour to talk about school, but also promote the culture. And it can be changed easily, so that's what I'm going to look at. So what happens in the socialization process? People learn prior to the employee joining the organization. Then the employee sees what the organization is like. And then they change and adjust based on what the organization is. It's how individuals socialize to an organization. So how do you sustain culture? You do it through 4 different ways: stories, rituals, material symbols, and language. So stories. Each company has its own story that keeps the vision and mission intact. As the company grows, the culture grows, the story changes, and it's handed down by the owners to promote what it's supposed to be. FedEx uses something called the Purple Promise, which is their guarantee that they'll deliver to you on time. Walmart has this notion of employee meetings beforehand and motivational settings to encourage you to perform well. And UPS works off of their guarantee and the fact that they've existed even in bad weather conditions to deliver when they promise. So some schools have culture based on stories that exist. If your school went through a crisis or a natural disaster, that story helped set the culture in your school district. Rituals. These are things that are taught that are expected by everybody working for them. Old Navy has this notion of basics in their selling. Sparrow has a receipt guarantee where if you purchase from Sparrow and they don't give you a receipt, you get your money back. In Chick-fil-A, they're told to tell everybody my pleasure at the end of it. So if you break that ritual, you're disciplined, and schools have rituals too. So different material symbols come to mind, and it becomes part of the culture. McDonald's are the arches, Pillsbury's the Doughboy, Nintendo's Mario. You can think of different symbols that probably exist within your organization that also make it stand out, whether it's your school's on a hill and when you drive over the hill, there's this beautiful vision of your school and what it looks like. That's part of the culture as well. So language. Different organizations have different language. School districts have different anagrams and different language. Oklahoma State has something called INSTITUTIONALIZATION. It's just the idea that we put our teaching, research, and service all together, and it's all interwoven, and that's our language as part of our culture here. So you have the responsibility to create an ethical organizational culture. The book gives us a bunch of different examples, but I truly believe that visibility is the most important in schools. If you're walking around in the school, people see you, you're a visible role model, you're going to be the most successful in this. So workplace spirituality doesn't have to be religious, but it notes that meaningful work takes place and it's community-based. But it could also be that your workplace has a religious element to it. And those of you that are interested in private schools or parochial schools, there might be workplace spirituality that's a major part of the culture, and you can't work there unless that exists. So, Chick-fil-A. I use this as a perfect example of organizational culture because when you think of Chick-fil-A, the first thing that should come to mind to you is closed on Sunday. It works for the organization because of their religious beliefs. If you're religious, some people are more likely to patronize Chick-fil-A because of that belief in workplace spirituality. And I think that's worth noting as well. So, globally, you have to adjust and understand global culture. When international business is conducted or international employees work, then it's a change in culture and it gives people incentive to keep the culture as part of the company. So, TAGIUIRI'S model has 4 dimensions, and the book diagram does a good job of documenting these for organizational culture, but I'm going to talk about these in terms of school organizations, and the book really does it more in a business form. So, ecology is the physical things that exist in the organization. I relate this to building and facilities, technology, and the pedagogy used in the school system. All of these define the culture, and that's the ecology. The social dimension in the organization could be the race, ethnicity, and gender of students and teachers, the skill level of the employees, the socioeconomic levels of the teachers and students, how leadership is done, and also how motivation exists. Social system is your communication patterns. Is it a hierarchy? If I go to the assistant principal as a teacher, instead of going to my department chair, am I going to look at somebody that broke rank and broke order? Is the structure formal, or is it a team-oriented system where everybody can bring their feelings to the table? Is there a bureaucracy? Is there not a bureaucracy? And as all of you know, every school district is different. So the idea of culture, when we talk about it, it's the assumptions, values, norms, beliefs, ways of thinking, behavior patterns, and cultural artifacts that tie into the system as well. So, we could spend an entire course talking about different types of organizational culture in schools. But you have a course that does that. So if you're concerned about this is an interest of yours, you need to take the resources that you got in that course and apply them to your organizational theory for this course. If you want to use this for school improvement, that's a good way to do this, and I think that helps as well. So, Alchi is one of the leading organizational theorists in the world. It's basically looking at theory Z. If you look at culture, this is an author that you want to look at. Good organizational culture kind of thinks of the human factor, how you relate to employees, how you reward employees, more than anything else. So if you think motivation in terms of rewards, theory Z is potentially a theory you might want to look at. So, the In Search of Excellence by Peters and Waterman showed that values in culture are going to help people get a common mission, and organizations will recruit people that believe and accept that culture as well. This is still one of the top books on the market on organizational culture, and we're over 30 years, and it's still something that we use and we look at the Peters and Waterman text when we're talking about organizational culture. So you also have to realize that multiple cultures exist within an organization. In schools, there might be a culture in the entire building, but there might be a culture between departments. Each one has different attributes, and each one potentially could impact how culture is served. Students are also going to be part of your organizational culture as well, on how they relate and how they're a part of each department or extracurriculars. Different people will look at different parts of the organization, and each building relates to the larger culture of the district as well. So, norms and assumptions are kind of the 2 major themes that relate specifically to the organizational culture of an institution. So, some buildings and some systems have beliefs that are specific to them. Some of you are probably thinking right now that if you left your building and went to another district, there might be different norms or assumptions that are in your building that are different. So try to think about what is in your school building or school organization. And when we're writing our case study, this is something that might come out as well. I like person-environment fit theory. I've used this in a lot of my writing. This is kind of the idea that there's stress occurs when people don't meet the demands of the environment because the environment doesn't fit the needs of the person. This is really selection, meaning that if you pick the right person in the beginning, you're going to have somebody that fits within the organization. If somebody's already in place, then you really can't select them, but you could move them into a different environment within the organization where they could be successful. It might not work for you because you might not have a lot of candidates that are seeking jobs. For those of you that only have a few candidates for open positions, you can't pick people based on their culture and fit. You have to train them instead to meet the culture. So that could be a challenge for you as well. So school climate and organizational effectiveness do connect. All effective schools have 5 common elements. Students have high expectations, there's caring environments and relationship, meaningful participation for all stakeholders, the environment is safe, and there's a connectedness for all students in the organization. So, high expectations are different from building to building and district to district. Some districts might say we want 100% attendance or 99% attendance. All students must be involved in one extracurricular activity. Some districts might be satisfied if the district is a C-rated school. Different schools have different sets of expectations. Students have to feel like the staff and the teachers care about them, and the staff has to feel that the building principal cares about them. The principal has to feel like central administration cares about them. It's a top-down hierarchy that also works bottom-up as well, but that can foster a strong organizational culture in your building. All stakeholders have to be involved. I believe in a good organization, students actually can have input on what goes on in the school. They can make decisions that can help improve the school, improve the activities they're involved in, and if they have choice, parents are happy. And if you can find a way to build that in your district, that can help you as well. Safe environments goes back to Maslow. All schools must provide safe and secure environments. If you can upgrade a building when possible and you can provide appropriate safety, that's going to help you, and that's going to also keep a strong organizational culture in your building. So there's a different type of connectedness for students. It's very difficult to measure. Connectedness for all students probably has a different meaning for you than it does for me. Does it mean a bully-free environment? Does it mean each student involved in one extracurricular activity? What does this mean? So if you're thinking about culture and connectedness, you need to define what it means for you and how it should exist. So that's it. That's the end of this chapter. One of the reasons why I record this lesson, and this is one of the online classes, is because you've already had a class in this. If this works for your final paper, use this stuff, but go back to your other class and grab the resources from there, and that's what you can use for your case study. If you have any other questions, please let me know what I can do to help. Thank you.